My name is Brian Wish. I'm an entrepreneur, CEO, and pathfinder. If I've learned anything in life, it's that self-discovery is a critical part of living intentionally, building meaningful relationships, and achieving the future we see for ourselves. In July of 2021, I sold all my possessions, headed west, and began a quest to live a fuller and more meaningful life. The experience helped me truly understand the power of a single moment. And through my conversations with leaders from all walks of life, I've seen how that one phone call, heartbreak, diagnosis, or lost job can transform the entire course of our lives. In this podcast, I sit down with entrepreneurs, influencers, and experts across industries to talk through the events that changed everything. Together, we'll relive the make-or-break decisions, hard conversations, periods of despair and hope, chance encounters, and everything that followed. Keith Cupp is the president of Gravitas Impact Premium Coaches, a global community of certified business coaches who serve mid-market companies across 6 continents. He has over 20 years of experience as a principal coach at Ascendancy Partners, his own private coaching business. He is also a former CEO of Gazelles International, a premier coaching association that uses the 4 decisions framework. As a certified coach and author of 7 Attributes of Agile Growth framework, Keith helps CEOs and leadership teams develop their skills, build accountability, and simplify execution. He has coached 5 clients to award-winning status, including Best Company to Work For, Inc. 500, and #1 Company to Work For in the state of Arizona. He is passionate about cross-cultural leadership and development and social entrepreneurship, having co-founded programs in Uganda and Mexico. He is a U.S. Navy vet, a miniature beagle lover, and a foodie. Over a decade ago, while participating in a volunteer activity abroad, Keith had a realization that helped lay the foundation for a new driving philosophy in his life. He shares his story on today's One Away Show. Keith, welcome to the One Away Show.
Well, Brian, great to be here and to have a conversation today with you. I'm appreciative of that.
Oh, well, it's a pleasure. Pleasure is always talking to you. So I'm shocked we've never recorded something in the past, but here we are now. Keith, what's the one away moment that you want to share with us today?
Well, let's see. So thanks for asking that. I gave this a little bit of reflection, but it probably came maybe about 15 years ago. And at my tender age, there are several, but the one that I kind of landed on is I participate in this group that takes students down to Mexico, high schoolers, 9th to 12th grade in the United States. And what we do is we go from Portland, Oregon, where we are. We gather about 20 students, some chaperones. We fly down to San Diego, and then we go down the Baja in Mexico, and we spend a week building a home for a family that would otherwise never have a home. And so once while doing that, about 15 years ago, we do this every 2 years, okay? Took time off for COVID, of course. I was there, and I'm watching young students be transformed in how they see the world and how they're beginning to see what really matters, because they're building a home for someone who would never otherwise have a home. And they've just come from America, very affluent and so on. So I'm watching these students literally transform their thinking. I'm watching the family and the neighborhood that are fascinated by the fact that these students would come and do this and serve, and the joy and the simplicity of their lives. And then it hit me that for me, out of that one away moment is life is really about serving others and building something into others they otherwise would not build into themselves, in this case, the students. And now, having done this for 20 years, Brian, I can tell you, many of the students have come back, gone off to university, are in careers now. It has absolutely made an impact and impression and molded their lives, whether they've decided to learn a foreign language, to serve overseas, to help the disadvantaged, to go back to Mexico and build homes or whatever. And so it's been a pleasure to have that moment and to see that happen on the ground, and watching the students and those receiving what the students were giving them. So.
Wow, that's incredible. As you were talking, I was thinking about how when we're called to do things that are so much bigger than ourselves, and we rally with people around in that same cause, like how inspiring that is. Keith, you've told me about this for a couple of years now.
Mm-hmm.
For the audience, I'd love for you to share kind of how the origin, like, how did this come about? Why have you, taken this, made this a recurring thing in your life? I would love to know the impetus.
And Brian, I'll ask you to go a little bit deeper and wider so I don't go too deep and wide, a little more specificity on what aspect would you like me to go into depth?
First and foremost, like, how did you deciding to go create a home and buy, how did this all start?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. No, I'll give you a couple of stories too. And as you know, Brian, I have 5 daughters. My wife, Jeanette, and I were celebrating 40 years of marriage this year. We've raised 5 lovely daughters and a son. They're out of the house now. But our oldest daughter, 21 years ago, came home from her high school and said, "Hey, Dad, Mom, they have this service trip to Mexico. I'd like to go." And we kind of checked it out, made sure it was safe, and said, "Hey, Jennifer, go." And helped give her a little bit of funding. She went there on a service trip. 10 days later, came back, and she was changed. And when I saw that, my daughter had changed in some way, how she saw the world and people and what mattered. I said, "Hey, I want to understand what that is, and I want to help with that." Okay. And so after that, I started going as a chaperone. Every year the students went with 6 children. That's a lot of school. So then some of the kids went to another school, and I said, "Hey, I want to start this trip as a spring ritual at this other school." So I approached the administration, said, "Hey, I've got an idea. We've done it here." And they said, "Go for it." And so we started it at another school. And so we've been going down there for over a decade, every other year at this newer school. And so it was just observing the inspiration in a young 17, 16-year-old daughter that really impacted and said, "Hey, let's do that." And then since then, I've had the privilege of just kind of looking around and seeing where this happens. And so eventually we created a trip to go to Washington, D.C., for the students to get on the ground and get in the middle of, our nation's capital. And then we helped create a trip through Gravitas, the company that I own and operate, to take coaches and go to Uganda and help build an entrepreneurial school with partners on the ground so that young Ugandans coming out of university with 60% unemployment could not wait for a job but become entrepreneurs. And so it's just this paying attention where this energy and this opportunity is to serve others in some level of, humble surroundings and build something into the younger generation that really jazzed me. So I'm always looking for this. People are saying, stop, you got to slow down, but I'm always looking for it. So, and you can hear the passion, of course.
Yeah, totally. I mean, totally can hear the passion. Keith, you mentioned that you saw something changing your daughter. It was an observation of how she saw the world differently. For you, were you yearning for a greater impact to point to, or did you do this? Was there something in a past chapter of life, like you'd been doing things like this and you wanted to do more of it? Like, what was I see this in my daughter. Now I want more of this for myself. Like, what was that switch for you?
Yeah, it really kind of goes way back. So my grandmother was an orphan and had no mother or father and grew up in an orphanage south of Portland, Oregon here. And then she eventually grew up, got married, had 4 children, and her husband died when my father was 8 years old. So my father never had a father. He had a father for 8 years. And then Dad had to figure out how to help be the breadwinner for a family of 5 at the age of 8 with his mother. And then he had to figure out, how to eventually, be a husband and a father without having that experience. And so as I grew up, I saw how disadvantaged my father was. And then from that, I said, hey, there's some things that I want to try and do to make the world right. Okay. I want to try and be a great dad because my dad was absent at times. And so I wanted to fill a hole there. And so that was part of it, was in that which I did not have in my formative years became part of my purpose and passion in my influential years. How can I fill those holes or create opportunities that I may not have had, that my dad may not have had, that my grandmother didn't have in other people's lives? Not without mistakes and errors and things along the way by any means.
Yeah. Well, Keith, you've always been so thoughtful and generous and giving. And you could have just told me right out of the gate it was your grandmother that, shaped you into who you were. And I would have all made sense. But now you've had to tell me through. No, I'm giving you a hard time. But
I know.
I think, it's funny, right? Like it's without that experience and then recognizing, the shift in your own daughter. But it made you shifting yourself to seek and desire more of. How special. How special.
Yeah, very, very much. Very, very much.
So let's build on this again. So you saw this shift in your daughter. She went away, kind of had this incredible experience. And you got the idea, maybe I should go figure out how to enable something like that for myself and other people. What was it? Like, what were the steps from, okay, I see this happen at home, to, okay, now I'm going to go create a trip for other people that I know and love can come join me in.
And so one of the core values that I hold personally, but is in our organization, if you were crack open Gravitas and look, there's a core value that says, oh yeah, why not? Okay. And through my life, I have been challenged by people saying, well, and sometimes it wasn't direct, Brian, sometimes it was indirect, but it was like, I don't think you can do that, Keith. And so out of that came this, oh yeah, why not? Other people thinking that something couldn't be done, either because they saw limitations in me or the resources or whatever, created a challenge inside. And so once I saw what I saw in my daughter, she became less self-centric and more other-centric, more service-oriented, more tender and caring. From this experience, I said, okay, I want to investigate and then I want to help scale that with others somehow. And then to your question, well, how did you do that? Well, I just simply drew on the experience for me that I learned in the United States Navy is when you're given a mission, you don't have an option not how to figure it out. And it's going to take other people and you've got to figure it out. So there's this thing all people have or don't have on a scale. It's called the figure it out factor. And an entrepreneur like yourself has it, right, Brian? You're going to figure things out, okay? Others don't have that. But anyway, so it was the challenge from within that let's figure out how to get this to other people so other families can experience what I experienced with this, beautiful young woman, my daughter. And then from there, I just said, hey, let me approach and let here to help. Let's figure it out together. Then gathering good people around you that are better than you in some areas. I'm not an attention to detail guy and, all that. I can do it. I've had to do it, but I would rather cast the vision, encourage the people, and then get people that are doing the planning and, all those things. And as we did this and created a vision and shared it, it was like people just showed up saying, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. So.
Yeah, that's cool. It's neat how you saw it. To your point, I can't do it all myself. Go gather the pieces and voila, you put it together. I would love for you to take me to that first trip, the very first one. I'd love to know about some of the characters, the people on this trip. I'd love to know kind of the feeling you had up until the trip to like once everyone was touched down on the same soil and like all about to take part. Like would love to know. Describe to me the feeling and once everyone was there in one place, kind of what was going through your head? Like, bring us to that moment.
Takes a lot of planning to do one of these trips. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background here. So look at the trip as we've got about 25 students, 5 chaperones. And so there's a lot of logistics. There's a fair amount of security. And then there's a lot, or there can be change and adversity coming your way. And so the trip is literally about 8 days. Okay. So we gather at the local Portland airport here. We get together. There's a lot of energy around this. The parents are there. The parents, some are crying, some are scared to death. They're saying goodbye, and we march the students through security. We get on the plane. We fly to San Diego. And it's like being, again, I'm ex-military. It's like deploying on a mission to do something, fantastic. So immediately this esprit de corps begins to build, where you realize you have to rely on one another on this journey, and it's going to be hard. And so we're on the ground in San Diego, keeping the kids together, getting luggage, marching to the vans. We take the vans to the local Costco near the border. Then we split into teams, and all the teams go out with a chaperone, and this team buys food, that team buys tools, that team buys materials. And this is all in orchestration. It's like an incredible orchestration, and the students are growing together. And then we come together, we pack the vans to the gills, and then we head south. And now we're in a foreign country with young students, 5 or 6 chaperones, and now we're driving 4 hours south into a foreign country where things are different around us. The signs, the language, we realize that we're in a foreign country and it's quite different. And so there's now this sense of, from camaraderie and esprit de corps and mission orientation, to this mystique of culture and adventure and a little bit of scariness. And, we stop and we get some water, some drinks, and then we get down to our destination, and now we're into this compound. We get unpacked, sleeping bags, got a fire going in the middle, a little bit of music, a little guitar playing, on the students. We have a meal together. And then we sit down and we plan our next day. Here's what we're going to do. And so it's almost indescribable of what it's like. Let me pause there. And is that helpful?
Yeah, I'm trying to set the scene for, I'm just saying, like, I want to get into the experience with you, because when we've talked about it, it's been, you've talked about it from such a place of impact and purpose and what you're enabling. And sometimes it's nice to understand the behind the scenes and the experience of what it's like for you going through it. And I think that's what I'm trying to capture here so this is great, Keith.
And so then we get up the next day. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of energy. And, I'm usually the first guy up, okay, because I'm, helping lead the chaperones as well as students. And so, we get the kitchen going, got, a team of students in the kitchen, the chaperones, a lot of excitement, kids want showers. Sorry, no showers. You just put your clothes on, we're going to work. We, have a good meal together. And then we head out, probably 5-6 miles away into vans. We get out of the vans, and now we go to work. And there's this field with nothing in it. Now we got to lay a foundation, and we're going to build a home. And we've got a plan, and we have local contractors, Mexican contractors, Spanish speakers, no English speakers. Now the students have to go to work, and one of our chaperones, and translate. Now we're trying to bridge the gap of culture and language to build something. And so that starts, and the students go to work and, start digging and laying cinder blocks. And so there's this wonderful orchestration going, and got some students singing, and, people in the neighborhood come and watch, and they're just perplexed on what in the world is going on here. And now the students begin to realize it's not about them. So we're watching the students in there. You see these light bulbs going off. Wow, trip isn't about me or us. It's about them, and we're here to serve them. And all kinds of cool things are happening while students are working. You know, kids bring a soccer ball. A couple of students peel off, play soccer with these, 8, 10-year-olds. And Brian, they're getting their butts kicked. And these are good high school soccer players. And these little kids are, kind of running around them in circles and so on. And so I am just enjoying watching the orchestration, the incredible blessing that these students are having as they realize we're here on a mission to serve, and that these people around us are real, and they are very, very grateful.
Wow. That's a good picture. I'm feeling the shift from pre-border to cross the border to get everyone on the same soil and kind of ready to build with the contractors on the ground, and how neat. No, I mean, Keith, I have a vision in my mind, or a visual of what this looks and feels like, and I appreciate you articulating that with such vivid detail. How many of these have you done? You might have said that earlier.
I think I've probably been 10 to 12, I think, over the last 21 years.
Wow. And you've kind of set the scene of the first one, but, of kind of the camaraderie and the scariness, but what it means to come together. But you look at, let's say, from the 20 years ago of when you first started these to the Keith today, how would you say you as Keith has changed in your perspective in ways that you never thought about coming into this? Like, what has happened because you've decided to set forth on this such mission-driven life?
Good question. And what I want to do before I answer that, Brian, I want to go back and just kind of finish without a lot of detail what happens during the week. And so day one, we're building and there's energy, but as we're going through the week, there are some injuries, there are some cuts, there are sunburns, there is amazing fatigue, there is, some upset stomachs, and, worse than that. And now you're getting to Friday morning, and it's kind of an army that's in disarray, and so you've got a few finishing the project. Some are just really hurting, but now Friday you've got a building and you're putting the roof on it now. Now you're into adrenaline and folks climbing up on the roof, high-fiving, pushing through fatigue and difficulty, doing things they would never believe they could do. And then Friday night, we have a big celebration. Some locals come and we have a carne asada feed. There's music, there's Mexican hot chocolate, there's a little bit of music, maybe a little dancing and fun. And it's very festive and a celebration. And then we're up the next morning, we're packing and we're on our way north. And in the vans on the way north, there's only one person awake, and it's the driver, because there's nothing but exhaustion behind you in all 3 or 4 vans, maybe 2 people, maybe the other chaperone. And you get to the border, you cross the border, and the first thing you do is you go to the In-N-Out burger, and you re-enter America, and you have, an In-N-Out experience. And then you get home, and everybody's exhausted, and the parents are glad to see their students. And then next week, we all get together at the school and we do a debrief. And the most common thing that happens, 2 things, is the students say, I went to serve them, but I was served. And the parents walk by to the chaperones and they say, hey, thanks, my kid's different. And so what this has changed in me is wanting to orchestrate experiences that stretch people to help them become more who they can become or want to become, or never dream they could become. Now that happens with the students, it happens with the coaches that we take to Uganda, it happens to coaches in Gravitas. We put them in situations where it's uncomfortable, it's stretching, it's safe, it's risky, but it becomes a beautiful thing. And the common pattern of feedback is, I never thought I could do that. thanks for stretching me. I'm a different person. Whether it's the students, the entrepreneurs, the coaches. My kids would probably admit to that too, in some ways, that, hey, if dad never would have taken me to Europe to be a part of a coaching event, I wouldn't have this view of the world. I would have this view of the world. And because of that, now I'm a global citizen. I travel. I understand international cultures and so on. So it's changed in me, Brian, willing to take the risk, understand what I want to create in others' lives as my gift to them, and then not being afraid to ask others to help.
I felt like my question was a bit of a quick transition, and I felt like you did a really beautiful job bringing it all together for me of what happens after the home's built to, the In-N-Out Burger to, when the parents say my kid's different, like how beautiful, right? And which connects to why this all started in the first place, right? When you saw your daughter and you saw difference in her, that's really special.
And Brian, can I take a little bit of a rabbit trail and tell another little story about this wonderful daughter? Because I think it's relevant here, because part of what I love to do is create experiences that are amazing, okay, and that grow people. And so my daughter, her name is Jennifer. When she was born, I was deployed at sea. I missed her birth. And because I was in the United States Navy, we're, out in the Pacific. And so she showed up 10 days early because I was going to go on leave and be there. And so my wife gave birth to Jennifer alone, and that was hard. And the way I was informed, I got a telegram on the ship on a Saturday afternoon. It said, "Ensign Cupp, congratulations. Baby girl, 6 pounds, 3 ounces. Mother doing fine. Girl unnamed." Because my wife and I decided we were going to name her together. So the captain scheduled a plane the next day, flew me off the ship to San Diego. I went up to Alameda, San Francisco, met my daughter, saw my wife, and we gave her the name Jennifer Amanda. Jennifer Amanda means fair lady worthy of love, if you look at the Latin.
Wow.
And so that's very important, fair lady, beautiful daughter, worthy of love, and for many reasons. So now fast forward almost 30 years. And the ship that I served on in the Navy is being retired on the other side of the world, other side of the US, in Norfolk News, Virginia. So I gather my father, who was a World War II veteran, and the last time he ever flew, wanted to honor him, gathered my son, so 3 generations, fly over to Norfolk, and my daughter, Jennifer, lives in Washington, D.C., drives down. So the 4 of us have a great time together, and we go to this ceremony that the United States Navy, where they retire a Navy ship. It's a big deal, especially for an aircraft carrier like the USS Enterprise. Dad was a VIP, he, World War II veteran and so on. But in the midst of all this, I say, "Hey, Jennifer, I want to take you somewhere." So we go down from the flight deck onto what they call the hangar deck, where all the planes are. And I walk to this very specific spot on the same ship that I served on, okay, with this being retired, 25 years later, 30 years later. And I stop her at this one point on the hangar deck. And I say, "Hey, look around here." And she looks around and she says, "What's up, Dad?" And I look at her and I put my arms on her shoulder and I look her in her eyes. And I say, "Jennifer, this is where I was standing when I learned you were born. And I read the telegraph that I had a baby girl born to this family. I was standing right here in this place 30 years ago." And so we both teared up a little bit, and I got a picture of us standing in that spot. But I wanted to bring closure for her. She didn't know her dad wasn't there, but I wanted her to know where her dad was when she was born. And I was given that opportunity. And it was a really special father-daughter moment, without a doubt.
Wow, that's so meaningful and significant.
Yeah, it was part of her family history.
Well, it's cool she was able to experience that moment with you too.
Yeah. And I got a lot of those moments I could share, but I won't share. So, but yeah, that's what life is about, creating these moments. Chip and Dan Heath wrote a book called The Power of Moments. And it is a fantastic book that I recommend any leader read, because moments can happen unintentionally, or we can orchestrate moments that are memorable and part of our family story, our business story, etc.
I mean, moments are happening across every aspect of our lives, no doubt. You've talked a lot about and touched on, I mean, beautiful experiences, family, trips you've created, but this thread of creating these incredible experiences for people to grow through. Not just experiences, but experiences where people can grow. I want to bring this around to kind of the life of Keith today and the work realm. But before we do that, why experiences? Like for someone it might not be, it could be something else. But like for you, like what is it about enabling growth experiences that you care so deeply about?
Well, what I've found in my life, but also in mentoring others, and then also our coaching organization for near coming on 20 years, is that meaningful change often comes about through experiencing change. And so, one way to change is to read or learn something, but it's a whole nother thing to learn something and then go do it with someone that you want to be there with or do it with or has been there before. And so I just believe personally that experiencing something outside of your comfort zone and our limited beliefs will create change and a greater vision for our lives. And I just believe that, and I've experienced that many times in my life personally, that I thought I could do this. I was totally stretched out of something, and then it was painful. Then I kind of snapped back here, and boy, I tell you, I then believed there are other things that could be done, and I didn't limit my beliefs.
Got it. That's great. No, I mean, I think it's important context, because that seems to be part of everything you do. And as it relates to where I want to transition to right now is the work front. Now, I want to share what you do, but I mean, with Gravitas, and I want you to give more context, but we work with Mark, who's one of the coaches through Gravitas, and I see Mark in a way as a conduit through what he's working with us through, is creating and enabling great experiences through our culture by the instrumentation that he's putting in place to support us. How do you create Gravitas? Like what was it? And I want to answer this under the lens of, we've talked about other organizations that create similar coaching programs, but Gravitas, it seems to be so intentional with how you've crafted it. So I guess two questions. One, like, how did Gravitas come about under this lens of experiences and growth opportunities? And then I'd love for you to kind of dive into the intentionality in which you've crafted it from a core level.
Having grown up in business, first I was on the front lines and then was given an opportunity to be in leadership positions around an executive table through time, eventually being a general manager, president, etc. And then from there, I went into coaching, and that came about because when the internet bubble burst in 2000, 2001, 911, the economy and all that, I was thrown off the bus of a company as a full-time employee and had to figure out my career. I had to reinvent my career based on adversity. And it was hard because we had 8 in our family, a single income, went to 0 income. And so I didn't have the liberty to think of a career. I had the need to go out and be an entrepreneur. So I started to consult. That turned into coaching. Big difference between consulting and coaching. We can talk about that at some point if you want. And then eventually I acquired clients and really had the joy of coaching clients and just thought I was going to be a coach. But then the leader of an organization, a coaching organization that I used to be a part of, said, "Hey, I'd like you to lead this when I step out." So I stepped in to that leadership position. And then we simply built a trusting environment with coaches. We helped grow them. We took a lot of the principles of, how you train people well and hold them accountable. And then we grew that from about, 25 coaches to 250 worldwide on 6 continents. It was a pretty big deal. It was very, very fun, and gave me an opportunity to travel and meet coaches and their families. And then there was a, big piece of adversity there where I left that organization and then had the opportunity to start Gravitas. And so part of that journey, Brian, when we started Gravitas, we had coaches that came with us and wanted to be part of our brand. And it gave me the freedom to dream and build something that if I had to start from scratch, we could build. But we already had some coaches. And so out of that came the dream of having a really high quality community of individuals that care about one another, that serve their clients, that are willing to take risks and grow, and they want to grow together in community and serve one another. And so what we're building here is a smaller firm of coaches worldwide, international, that really are great at their craft and that they want to grow in community. And so what we do, we look at each coach as an individual. We develop a development plan specifically for them. One size does not fit all. And then we challenge them to take that development plan and to grow themselves up into what our research is showing, what we call a maestro coach, a coach at the top of their game in the mid-market in many ways. And I've been doing a 2-year research project on those coaches. So I have a really good view of what that looks like a Mark Green. And now we're determining how we help coaches get there. And that's a lot of fun. It's a lot of hard work, but it's a lot of fun.
Interesting. You talked about doing this. You were doing this yourself for a while. And you were asked to help lead, and kind of things snowballed. Like, what is it about coaching Keith, because you're a player and a coach in a way at this point, right? Like you're self-coaching, but you're leading your organization, which I think is super neat. When you were first kind of walked into this field of coaching, like, let's just start with you for a second. What was it about coaching that really called you? Why do you love it so much to be like, now you built a whole career and business and in life around it? Like, tell me more.
Well, I when I first started, it was out of necessity. Okay, literally, I go home, I open the door, there's these 6 wonderful children and my bride, and they need to be fed. And I just lost my full-time, well-paying job, okay? And so it was like, I got to figure this out. And so there were days, Brian, when I would leave the house, I'd make breakfast for the kids, kind of the tradition for dad here. And I'd say, hey, kids, I'm off to work. I would close the door and I'd get on my doorstep. I'd head in my car. I had no idea where I was going to go. I didn't know what to do. So I went out and then I just started talking to people and letting them know, hey, these are the problems I can solve. Okay. So it all started with a need that was critical, but also a desire to solve problems. And I'm a problem solver. I love solving problems. Okay. And so I just went out on the market, started knocking on doors, calls, and say, hey, do you have any problems in this area that I can help solve? And so somebody finally said, yeah, why don't you come solve it? How much are you going to charge? This much. And when I did that, there was so much joy in serving someone, designing a problem to understand it, solving it, and then seeing the joy in providing a solution. And then, of course, making an income for my family. So that began a flywheel of identifying problems, helping craft solutions, solving them, often in an innovative way, and then seeing the joy on the face of the beneficiary. That flywheel started turning. And that's a very joyous flywheel. So that's turning for myself, and now that's going well. Now I'm at capacity as a coach. And then I get a call from my lifelong mentor and saying, hey, why don't you come? I think you might be able to help lead this. Didn't see it coming, got into it, and then created a new flywheel where it's not just about me, but it's about others doing this.
I didn't know the backstory about the getting laid off or not having a job, and then what problems can I solve? And one of the questions, Keith, is what I've picked up from you in our conversations over the years. the people that you've let into Gravitas. It's not just like anyone it sounds like can come in and coach at Gravitas. It's you're looking for specific types of people with specific skill sets and just people with specific values. Like, what's it take to be a Gravitas coach?
Yeah, great question. And this is, part of our evolution to, we would consider greatness, not in an arrogant way, but we limit the total size of our organization globally because we don't want to be big. We want to be influential and effective with one another. Then we say, okay, each year we're going to invite a certain number of coaches into Gravitas. This year, we're in 2024, we're going to invite 16 people into this community. Because if we invite more than that, we may not craft the great experience we want them to have. Less than that, then it doesn't drive our economic engine. So there's a measure of exclusivity and a measure of scarcity for all the right reasons. But what we look for first is their core values. Do they align with our core values? Our core values include welcome, now check your ego at the door. Okay, that's the humility. We win together or don't play. I got to know how you're going to win as a coach, and you need to know how we're going to win as an organization. If we can't both commit to it, let's not take the field of play. Okay, and then there are other core values that go with that. So it's first the core values. But it's then people who want to be excellent at their craft. They have a pursuit of excellence at their craft. And our craft is coaching, okay? And so they've got to have that desire or even the evidence of that. And then the last thing is they're not lone wolves. They want to do it in community. They're willing to learn from one another and then give to one another. Every one of our coaches that I interview, and I personally interview every coach that comes in, at some point I ask them often early, hey, Brian, we're going to invite you into Gravitas. There's something unique about you, whether it's your experience, a skill that we don't have. I want you thinking about what your unique piece of DNA that you are going to add to your peer group. And we may not know right away, but within a year, I want you to come back and say, Keith, this is it. This is what I can add to this incredible group of people worldwide because it's unique to me. Now you have this amazing DNA that is, some of it's common, but some of it is very unique. I mean, we've had coaches that have been CEOs. That can be very unique. We have just all kinds of wild stories that they bring to the table about their life experience that is really, really cool.
No, I mean, what I'm picking up is you're wanting to work with people with great values, people who love the practice of being a coach. And I also really love what you said about they want to do it in community. It's not about them. It's about, they want to eat too, but it's helping everyone else in the organization do better and perform well. And I remember the retreats that Mark does with other Gravitas coaches and how you guys are all getting together and when you address the organization, things that you want, how cool to be able to break bread with other people supporting your mission and vision and helping them be part of something that's meaningful at large. And it just seems like it attracts a really solid group and culture of people when they're together. So I've noticed that.
Well, an example of that that's happening even right now, I could give you a handful of examples or even more, but we had a coach about a year and a half ago let us know that he had cancer. And so he began a very difficult journey of battling cancer with his life partner's wife beside him. And he had this client base of 6 to 8 clients. And so he let us know, and there was a group of coaches that rallied around him and said, I'll tell you what, let us help. And so where that is ended up is there were 6 different coaches. One took a client, each one took a single client, served that client to keep continuity while this coach was going through cancer battle, did not want any income from that. So the client continued to pay the coach who was fighting cancer. He still got the income. And then these 6 coaches served their peer without wanting any compensation to keep him in the game, encouraged, feeling supported. And now the good news, he's on the other end of that. He's in remission. He's won the battle. He's now taking these clients back and serving them. It's a beautiful story of how a community saw a need, came together, served without anything in it for them, and helped a fallen comrade get back up and is now marching in community. And I could tell you all kinds of those stories over the years, over almost 20 years now.
No, that's spectacular. I mean, I think it shows, it's a testament too, like of the people you've let into the community, right? Just to support that individual going through such a hard thing, but and how they rallied around this person to, make them feel supported. How special to see.
Yeah. I had someone not in business recently say, "Hey, what do you do for a living, Keith?" Okay, and they don't know, coaching, all that. So I, paused a moment and said, "Let me think about this. How can I translate this to this individual?" I said, "Oh yeah, here's what we do. We find some of the greatest people in the world that want to be excellent at their craft, and they want to do it in community. That's what we do at Gravitas." And they said, "Oh, okay, I get that." So there you go.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Keith, I know we have a few minutes left here. I want to ask you one more question before we wrap. You mentioned this research project, which you told me about when I first met you, of bringing together some of the brightest coaches and kind of getting research of what's enabled them to do that so that you can help bring up people around them. I'd love to understand more about this project, what you see for it, and bring us home.
Yeah, so it's a work in progress. So having interfaced with somewhere around 750 coaches over almost 20 years and inviting them into organizations, screening them or saying, no, don't join, those 750 data points. 2 years ago, I said, hey, I'm getting older. Okay, these aren't gray highlights I put in every morning. They're real. And so what would I want to leave behind in this beautiful industry called coaching? And so that led me to ask the question, what is it that I have that's unique that not a lot of others have that I could leverage for their benefit? And that led me to an incredible number of quality relationships with coaches worldwide. And then I said, well, how about I look at the subset of the top performing coaches and let me create a hypothesis. So I looked at, 50 of them in my mind's eye, and I said, okay, I have a hypothesis that the top performing coaches in the mid-market, they think differently, they behave differently, and they have outsized or larger impact. And then from that, I asked why. And so in my why, I came up with what I believe there are 7 things that the greatest coaches in the mid-market in the world have and think and do. And then under those 7 areas, I created 5 questions. And so I have a rubric of 35 questions. And I get on an interview with these coaches one-on-one, very intense 90-minute interview. And I go through these questions. I record it because the recording is the data. And then what I do is I look at every question across all the coaches, then we look at the patterns and so on. And so it's a pretty solid research project. And now what it has done, Brian, it's helped us understand the persona of a top performing coach, how they think differently, behave differently, have greater impact. And I'm 2/3 of the way through the interviews. I still have another third to do. I've been processing some of it. And in the middle of this, AI has become mainstream. So we're going to include AI in the final data analysis. So I'll be analyzing it, not looking at the AI. I'm not going to do that until I'm done. And then I'll look at what AI says and I'll look at the 2 and compare. And then what I want to do with that, I simply then want to leverage that for individuals that are earlier in their coaching career or have holes or are coming into the coaching industry so they can go from here to here faster, shorter period of time through that body of content. And that could be a book. We'll see. Definitely going to be a podcast because I want to interview all 50 coaches one by one over time so people can listen to the stories, the experiences that have shaped and changed them. Back to the fact that it's an experience that really creates fundamental long-term change. Sure. And so I want to share that kind of like we're doing here as you and I have a conversation.
As you've discussed the building of the home experience and what you're doing across the world for people that have homes and bringing that together to Gravitas, to this book, and your family, seems like a very intentional life that you've led, that you lead, and how you show up in the world. It's very consistent. It's a joy.
Well, but for full disclosure, this will be my disclaimer. So 2 things. Some of these things were back to the first question you asked me, okay? What are some of the inflection points in your life? Losing a full-time job while raising a family or having a family of 8 with no income. I did not plan that, and I didn't want to do that, but that became the impetus to put me in a position where I had to grow and I had to figure it out and I had to rely on others. And there are several things. The other part of that are the mistakes that I have made. And that could be a whole nother conversation. But those, have shaped me. They've, hurt others and then shaped them. But they always seem to come around to be something in the end that appears to be something more beautiful than I could, ever imagine. I think about the beautiful pottery that sometimes when it's broken, they then put it back together and they use a gold solder. And that which was broken is now more beautiful because it was broken and it was repaired with gold seams. So it's more beautiful and valuable than when it was first created by the potter. But it would only become that because it was broken and then it was crafted back together with the beauty of gold and workmanship. So,
we could record again on the cracks and all the things, but without the cracks, you probably wouldn't have gone on to do some of the things that you've done, which I know we focused on some of the positives, but you're right. Every story, there's 2 sides, and it's a whole human experience that,
we all have them. Yeah, there's no doubt. And the key to life becomes looking at them and then taking that which was broken or weak or damaged or unplanned, and then leveraging that into something beautiful by serving others, whether it be a trip, an experience, for us, a coaching firm, etc. We're just motivated by helping people like Mark Green become the best they can as a coach. And Mark well, he goes all over the world with Carrie and their boys. They have a ball. He's making, really good money. He's philanthropic. They're living the life that they always wanted. And to be able to be a catalyst, Mark's doing the work, but be able to help him catalyze that's a pretty satisfying thing.
This is true. And I've witnessed it firsthand, and I've witnessed the birthing of where it all came from with you. So it's you are making an impact, ripple effects in the world, and it's impacting people like me because of you. So thank you, Keith, for all that you're doing for the world, all that you've done. And I'm excited to know you. I'm honored to know you and excited to continue watching you sprinkle your magic around for us to all be impacted by. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me on today and just giving me an opportunity to share a few stories.
It was a pleasure, as always.
Thank you for joining me on the One Away Show. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, please leave a review and follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Have a one away moment you'd like to share? Follow me on Twitter or Instagram at BrianWish_, or reach out to me on LinkedIn and tell me about the moment that altered your life. The One Away Show is produced by Arcbound, a company dedicated to helping entrepreneurs, experts, and visionaries launch authentic personal brands. From message development to podcast production, social media content generation, and book writing, we work with you to create your arc. Head to arcbound.com to learn more. Thank you for listening, and please join me next time on The One Away Show.